Good afternoon, podcast listeners. This is Kat Johnson for Travel Insider. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to have Jennifer Kennedy from HX Expeditions with me. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, Kat.
I'm so excited to have you. And as you and I were talking a little bit before, I am so interested in this topic that I'm going to try to restrain myself because HX is an amazing cruise line with these amazing experiences. But for people who might not have heard of HX before, can you give us a little history and background as to who you are?
Sure. Yeah, so we're a small ship expedition company. So we take curious travelers to some of the most remote destinations on the planet. And, our ambition really is to be the number one sustainable cruise brand in the world. So we want to make adventure travel the ultimate luxury for explorers everywhere and ultimately change the way they see the world.
Now, where did HX come from? Because you guys haven't just appeared overnight. You have a very long and beautiful history.
We do. So we were a Norwegian company, and we actually had our very first expedition in 1896. So we sailed up into Svalbard on a much smaller ship, the MS Lofoten. And so it was just really interesting. So that was 1896. That's nearly 130 years of experience that we bring to the table. There are not many people that can make that claim. And, we really built this company during a time of some of the big Norwegian explorers. So you had like Amundsen and Nansen going to the South Pole, the North Pole, the Northwest Passage. So I think for us, it's really safe to say that that sense of adventure and exploration is in our DNA here at HX.
Now, you cannot take a 4 or 7,000 person cruise ship to these destinations that you guys are really specialized in. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about your ships? What makes them special? What sets them apart?
Sure. So we have 5 ships in our fleet. Our 2 newest ships are going to be our Amundsen and our Nansen. And what's special about them is that they are our 2 hybrid battery powered ships. These are the first ships in the industry. They are the only ones that currently exist in the cruise world. And the Nansen was actually voted the most sustainable cruise ship in the world in 2020.
And it's beautiful. I mean, I'm looking at the picture right now. It's absolutely gorgeous.
It's stunning. So on those ships, a couple of things that differ from the rest of our fleet is we have a spa on board for both of those ships. We have a heated pool. We have the saunas on board for those. We have a running track on the top deck for those who, kind of want to stay active while they're traveling. But they're really beautiful ships. We also have our Fram, which is about a 200 passenger ship. And then we have our Spitsbergen, and that's approximately around 170 passenger ship. And we also have our Santa Cruz, and she sails exclusively in the Galapagos, and she's a 90 passenger ship.
Now, the 2 ships you mentioned first, how many passengers do they hold?
So those hold up to 500, but typically we range about 350 to 450 on those ships. And so we've done that intentionally. For us, we think that's the perfect size for some of the destinations they're sailing to. So for example, into Antarctica, one thing to keep in mind, you are crossing the Drake Passage, and you never know what you're going to get with the Drake. Sometimes it's, the Drake Lake, and, sometimes it's an adventure. But because of the size of those ships, it offers that additional stability for our guests when they're passing through the Drake Passage, just to make it a more comfortable experience for them.
Awesome. Now, before we head right into expeditions, I did want to just let our listeners know the things that are included when they're on an HX expedition. I know you have your excursions, which we're really going to talk about more later because they're super interesting. But you also have your meals and your drinks and your Wi-Fi, and all of that's included when somebody purchases a ticket?
That's correct. So starting in October, we're moving to a full all-inclusive model. So all the things you just mentioned and all the things that you would expect, your meals, your gratuities, your Wi-Fi, your beverages, things like that, those will all be included. In addition to that, you will have some of your experiences that are included each and every day. So like your daily landings, of course, that's weather permitting. Those will be included. We do have some premium experiences that will be an additional cost. An example of that would be, say, in Antarctica, if you had a guest that wanted to camp overnight on the ice on the peninsula, that would be an additional cost. But all of your daily landings and kind of Zodiac outings are part of the all-inclusive. And then we also will have Wi-Fi, which you mentioned. We use Starlink across our entire fleet. All the gear that you need for your expedition trip. So you will receive an expedition jacket to use for your trip, and it's also yours to take home with you. So then you'll also have boots that you're loaned for the duration of your trip, and you'll need those to do all your landings. So no need to pack those. No need to rent them. We don't charge for them. And then for any of the premium experiences that our guests might participate in, any of the required gear that would go along with that. So if you're kayaking, the wetsuits, the thermal suits that go with that, all of that is included for the guests.
Awesome. Now, you touched a little bit on the destinations that you travel to. When I think HX, I typically think Antarctica or Galapagos. You have some other places that you head over to as well, though.
We do. So Antarctica is going to be our number one destination. And I think a lot of times when people think like small ship expedition, they are always thinking like cold weather places. But Galapagos is a huge destination for us. We added it to our portfolio about 3 years ago. But Alaska is very big for us. And often you'll have guests who have traveled to Alaska before. They've sailed to Alaska. It's been a different experience, but many of them want to go back with a smaller ship experience, do the expedition. We're able to get into some of those smaller ports that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So people do love Alaska for expedition. And then in addition to that, Greenland, Svalbard, and we do have like a British Isles trip as well.
Now, you have to talk a little bit about this picture because you explained this picture to me, but our listeners absolutely have to understand what these people are doing and where they are.
Yeah, so this is actually very funny. We offer this as part of our citizen science program in a couple different areas, but it's specific to reindeers. And so there are some researchers that are actually they're researching the effects of climate change on the reindeer population. And so one of our guest scientists that we had on board, she was going out to track reindeers in the afternoon, and we were going to be on land anyhow, and we had such interest from guests who said, we want to help. So she's essentially looking for reindeer stool samples as she's walking around some of, this like densely forested area. And so the people got really into it. They'd be like, okay, like, hey, I think I have one over here. And so it has to be, very fresh. Apparently there are certain parameters around that. But essentially everyone was just tracking reindeer herds the entire day and like waiting for them to use the bathroom. But it was interesting because that's how they track climate change, and they're able to study that and the reindeer population through that. So,
and I can tell you there's probably not a whole lot of cruise lines that you travel with that you would get an experience like that. But just to be so hands-on, and that's what I really love about HX. So I would really love to talk about your scientific research focus. You have amazing hands-on experiences that when people are going on their cruise, they're going to get the good food and they're going to get the spa on some of those ships. They're going to get a beautiful cabin, but they're also really going to engage in the places that they're at. And that's so awesome. I know that in Galapagos, you have a program with your bird.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do in Galapagos, and we offer in a couple other areas, but it's, as you would expect, big in Galapagos, is our eBird. We partner with them. And so that's essentially a platform that allows kind of bird watchers to download images of different birds, listen to audio, manage lists. They're also encouraged to upload some of their own images. And this ties in really well to a new partnership that we just launched about a month ago with the National Audubon Society. So we are going to have several departures in 3 different destinations that are going to be specific for the Audubon Society. And so they are going to participate really heavily in this eBird citizen science program that we offer.
That's so cool. And then you also on board your ships have science centers where you not only conduct experiments, but you have lecture series. There's so much for people to learn when they're on board about the destinations that they're in. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So the science centers on board our ships, they really are state of the art. They are open and accessible for our guests on every single sailing. They offer state-of-the-art equipment, and they're the heart of the expedition ship. So much of what we do at HX is going to be science and educational focused, and that's one of the things that really separates us from other people that are in this market. So guests will have an opportunity to go in. They will be able to use the microscopes. They can study some of the different samples and look at the samples that are already collected and that live in the science lab. There's skulls of different animals. And of course, all of this information and all of this studies is going to be specific to the regions that we're traveling in. So before people even have a chance to see some of the marine life or see like bears in Greenland, they can kind of get an idea of what the skull looks like, what's some of the information about it. And there'll be a lecture series included in that as well.
And the people that are leading those lectures, who are they?
So some of them will be members of the expedition team. A lot of our members of our expedition team have advanced degrees where they study a certain type of marine life, animals, things like that. We will also have visiting scientists that are traveling with us on our ships, typically at all times. So there's always live research that is taking place with different organizations that we've partnered with. So they will sometimes during the day be kind of doing their own observations, collecting their own samples, and then the guest will have an opportunity to hear them speak about some of their findings even from that day. And that part's really fascinating because it hasn't even made it into a science journal yet. Like it's just been discovered. They've just kind of put the pieces together, and our guests are able to kind of hear what their thoughts, what their feedback are on that. And then we also have historians that will travel with us as well. We have a historian that's on every single ship, and they will give you the history just of the region. If we're traveling to a place with communities, you'll learn about what the indigenous communities are, what the history is there.
And you touched on this a little bit, but the scientists who are doing the research, not only are you going to hear from them, you're going to be able to participate with them with some
Correct.
amazing equipment in the destinations that you're in.
Yes. So if you have guests that are really interested in getting a little more hands-on with some of the scientific research, we actually have science-specific zodiacs, and those will go out every single day. And the guests can sign up for them. They can be part of them. It's no additional cost. And they go out and they collect research with the scientists. And so some of the stuff they might do is maybe they'll use a Secchi disc, and this is used to measure the turbidity of the water. They'll use a plankton net, and this is just collecting, as the name suggests, different types of plankton. And they can take this back into the science centers, and they can actually use some microscopes, and they can help research this and just kind of determine what is going on with some of the water, what's the food supply for some of the marine life of this area. Are there any, issues, anything that we should be concerned about, things of that nature.
Awesome. And that goes out every day. And depending on the region that you're in or the destination that you've chosen, those experiments are going to look different. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So they're all going to be specific to the destinations that we're sailing in. So, for example, I was just in Greenland on ship a couple of weeks ago, and we actually had a lovely scientist. Her name is Sophie. She was studying the effects of whales versus vessels, and just kind of what that relationship is. So, there was a huge focus on whale watching when we were there. The zodiacs, the science zodiacs would go out, and you would look into the marine life. They were doing a little bit of water collection sample just to kind of measure certain aspects of it. But it's fantastic. And the guests really love being able to kind of immerse themselves in that type of experience.
Absolutely, because it's one thing to travel to a destination and see it and do the tourist things that you can do there. I mean, that gives you one layer of an experience, but what a nice, deeper understanding and layer that you get when you get to travel with family, with friends, with different groups, even. I think if you belong to the Audubon Society, if you belong to different groups, you guys can come together and have these experiences together as a group.
Precisely. So I think that's one of the great things, like going on this type of trip, right? You know that if other people are traveling, they're going to be like-minded individuals. So even if you're a solo traveler, which there are a lot of us out there, depending on the type of destination you're sailing to, you're going to have someone who's interested in the same thing. So it's really easy to bond with people going out on these Zodiac boats and kind of sharing those experiences with them.
Absolutely. And so I think for me anyway, the problem would be trying to pick where to go because All of the experiences that you offer are so great. So luckily, Expedia Cruises has wonderful travel consultants. So if anybody's interested in booking their trip on HX Expeditions on one of these beautiful ships, the ships really are. They're so beautiful and so well designed for the destinations that they're choosing to go to. Then you can discuss that with your travel consultant, determine what destination is best for you at what time of year and which itinerary, and your travel consultant will absolutely help you with that. So did we miss anything? I feel like we covered a lot. Did I miss anything? Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. I think we hit all the high points.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. I really loved learning about all these amazing opportunities on board the HX. So hopefully you'll come back and visit us again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kat. It was a pleasure.